think they're cooperating underwater. One is maybe holding the carcass and the other ones are stripping the blubber off of it. They don't really compete or fight when they're feeding. They seem to work together.
Man, did that happen fast or what?
Unbelievable.
The female just grabbed the carcass and is just towing it under. She's using her tail flukes there to propel her to pull thousands of pounds underwater. And we've seen chunks of blubber that are almost like squares. They're just like really cut almost perfectly.
Yeah, to see this amount of killer whales is amazing, not only out here, but anywhere in California. This, to me, seems to be that once-in-a-lifetime experience.
In some years, we might just see one attack for the whole season, and some we may not even see an attack. Well, the 2004 season was really unprecedented. We've never seen anything like that as far as the number of attacks on the gray whales in Monterey Bay. We knew about at least 16 attacks, and of those, 4 of them escaped, and 12 were actual kills. Possibly as many as 30% of the gray whales born could be killed by killer whales. But right now it seems to be kind of a check and balance, because when there's fewer calves born, then we see fewer attacks and fewer killer whales in the area.
1/3 of the calves won't survive the trip north, due to many causes. But in the cycle of life, nothing goes to waste as life passes from one form to another. The calf's carcass will feed countless animals, large and small.
Well, the old rule of ecology that there's no free lunch has a flip side, and that no lunch goes uneaten. So when you have a population that comes back, like gray whales have, to be as abundant as they ever were, that's going to be taken advantage of by predators on gray whales. And certainly it looks like killer whales have figured out the timing, the precise timing and the routes.
We've heard people mention that the killer whales are just killing the calves just for the tongue.
Certainly seems to be a preferred part. Also, by tearing out the tongue, the animal will bleed to death very quickly. So it may be a kill technique. But once the animal's dead and bled out from the tongue being removed, they can strip the blubber and other parts of the animal underwater where it's less conspicuous.
Why do you think that the eastern gray whale population's been so strong in coming back?
We knew exactly what habitats gray whales occupied, and the League of Nations protected them in 1935. And then when the IWC came along, they continued that protection status. And the Mexican government closed off the lagoons to whalers as a part of that blanket protection the League of Nations extended. So knowing the habitats is really critical to being effective in a conservation measure. That's part of what's missing for most other large whales that are endangered. When gray whales become sexually mature, the female's giving birth to a calf every other year. That's the highest reproductive rate we know of any of the large whales. Other species have it harder, I think, than gray whales in terms of their ability to come back from very depressed numbers. I am pretty awestruck by these animals. And now when we're getting the good things that can really help promote conservation, we're going to be instrumental, I think, in making it possible for these species to recover. That's personally gratifying.
Where did you get that hat? I want to get one just like it.
For the gray whale population to continue to recover, they need a dependable source of food. Farther north, a discovery is made that changes what we know about gray whales. Carrie Newell has unveiled the secret of Depot Bay.
They like us.
That's what makes my work fun.
It's amazing. You do this every day, and your enthusiasm is amazing, incredible.
Because they're always different. You never know what they're going to do. Because they knew we were here.
Oh, yeah. Came to check us out. Lost them now, though.
For some whales, the migration ends here. Jean-Michel and his daughter, Céline, joined the team in Oregon to investigate.
This is a place where whales stop. And are they called resident population?
Well, this is a population that we do term here in Depot Bay as our residents. And what part of my PhD study is trying to figure out how many of these are consistently coming back year to year. I think because they're finding an ample food source here, you know, they don't have to travel that extra. Instead of doing a 10,000-mile round trip, you know, they're doing a 5,000-mile round trip, so they don't have to travel that extra distance, and, you know, they don't expend the extra energy and everything else.
To prove her theory, Carrie must identify specific whales that stay to feed here and return every year. So far, she has documented 56 residents. The team will experience firsthand the stages of an unexpected discovery.
2 outbound Depot Bay, 2 outbound.
The entrance to Depot Bay consists of a narrow and often turbulent passage. Just getting in and out of the harbor can be tricky.
All right, hang on here. Okay, now look at the weather. It's opening up. Yeah. Blue sky.
Carrie's search began with wondering why the whales were hanging out in the kelp.
Back in the kelp. Right here,
Yep.
right here,
Yep.
right there, it's coming up. Yay!
Was that cool?
It took a simple test to find what the whales already knew.
Oh, I hope we got mysids. Ah, there'd be mysids. We got mysids.
It's right here.
Look at them, though.
Yeah, wonderful.
Oh, these are the cute ones, too. You know, we have 2
Those are the
species.
cute ones.
Yeah, they're my favorites.
So that's what's sustaining these resident gray whales here off the Oregon coast.
It's really hard to
amazing.
believe that such a huge animal feeds on these little tiny things.
Oh, I know.
Our team reported to me that you got totally excited when one of the whales pooped.
Oh, I gotta get it. Right there, right there, right there. I gotta get my net. Oh my goodness, yes. When I first began this study, I was watching the whales, and it's like many times they're in the kelp. It's like, okay, what's happening? So I went over to the kelp, jumped in the kelp, found these huge swarms of mysid shrimp. And I said, bet you they're eating mysid shrimp. If the mysids are here and the whales are here, you would assume that's what they're eating, but you don't know for sure.
Whale!
Yeah, right here. Everyone along the coast, you know, everyone was saying, no, they're eating amphipods, but no one had really looked. It was just an assumption, because that's what they eat in Alaska. It was a good assumption, of course. So I wanted to say for sure that they were eating those mysid shrimp. So when we saw the whale release its fecal material in the water, there it is. Good. I need to run through it. I just took the plankton net and scooped it up. Took it back to the lab, looked at it. Sure enough, there were mysid shrimp fragments. It'd be cool to see all these on the screen.
What is it that they don't digest?
Usually parts of the carapace, parts of the, you know, like crabs have the external skeleton, so bits and pieces of that. But also the tail, the telson with the uropods, the way you can identify the species comes through in the excrement. And so I can tell you exact species that they're eating, because that tends to come through quite well through the digestive tract. And so once you have that can say, yes, this is definitely what they're eating. I mean, I'm sure the mysid swarms have always been there. Gray whales were probably always feeding on them, but finally we're making that connection. So mysids are very, very important toxicity studies. I mean, if we would have a whole bunch of pollutants dumped in the water right here, they are so sensitive to pollutants that they'd all die. All of a sudden the mysids are gone, you know, we're gonna probably have problems. No whales, you know, the rockfish will suffer, the salmon will suffer. The economy at the coast here will suffer. So everything's interconnected. I mean, we're so dependent in Depot Bay on the ocean here. Oh my goodness! She scared me. Bunch of whales, got mysids. Pretty productive day.
I understand you've seen a whale here that appears to have been shot by a harpoon, an explosive harpoon.
Exactly. Scarback. She has a huge
it's the
chunk
same one.
missing. And in 1985, she did not have the scar. In 1987, she did.
And survived.
And survived.
And then came back here.
Yep. And the wound has not healed. I mean, I've taken pictures of her every year for the last 12 years. So I've been able to look at the wound over those years, and it looks exactly the same from the first time I photographed it in '91 until this year when I took pictures of her. She has had 3 calves in the amount of time that I've seen her, and the males are still attracted to her, even though she has this huge wound. It's right around her dorsal hump area. They aimed a little bit too high, thank goodness. But
Do you think whales are attracted to each other because of their look?
Scarback definitely has had lots of males around her, so we've seen her mating here with males. So, I mean, the wound doesn't seem to have deterred any males from her. But
Maybe the attraction comes from within.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll never know what makes a whale beautiful, but the work of Dr. John Kalampakidis shows that every gray whale is visually distinctive. As a result, each can be studied over the course of time.
We actually have over 6,000 identifications we've made of these gray whales, and we have collaborating research groups up and down the coast that have helped gather that data. This shows this photo ID technique of identifying individual whales. Using natural markings, it's been used on species like blue whales, killer whales. It's a technique developed in the 1970s. And in addition to using the sides of the whales like this, you can also use the tails. This is the tail of a gray whale, and it has distinct markings on it. Well, these are some of the identified gray whales that we track, and we actually keep these rubber banded together. This is the left side of an animal, and this is the right side, the same animal. And all of these photographs in this pile are the same whale. So we can actually see different times and places that this animal was seen.
By identifying individuals, researchers have confirmed that resident whales range from Northern California to British Columbia, a small part of the larger group.
You know, the whole gray whale population is estimated to be from a high of 26,000 to about 17,000 are the recent estimates. And this seasonal resident group is a very small portion of that. So it's only a couple of hundred animals. They tend to feed on different things than the animals in the Bering Sea. You see them feed on things like ghost shrimp, swarms of these mysid shrimp, and they seem to do pretty well at it. We have an estimate of a survival rate of over 95% year to year, so showing a very good, healthy survival rate. And that was especially surprising in 1999 and 2000. We had this major mortality that might have wiped out a quarter or a third of the overall gray whales, but these seasonal resident gray whales did just fine.
These resident whales might survive if conditions in the Bering Sea and their food source there should change. But by feeding in Washington state waters, they've encountered a new obstacle: people seeking to feed themselves. In 1999, the Makah people of Washington state invoked treaty rights of 1855 and killed their first gray whale in over 70 years. Their need was explained as largely cultural. This was sustenance for fading tradition and ancient pride. It was also highly controversial. In 2002, a federal appeals court suspended the hunt until the impact, especially on resident whales, was better understood.
When you consider the very modest number of animals they were looking to kill, up to 5 a year, that clearly wouldn't have an effect on a population of 20,000 or more. But if you're talking about a population of a couple of hundred, you potentially have an impact.
Following the Makah precedent, 17 other tribes have applied for permits to conduct a hunt of their own. Ongoing research to know what the population can sustain and what else might diminish their numbers has become even more critical.
This is a whale that washed up dead, and after we kind of pieced the skin back on the animal, we saw it was the same animal, and you can line up these same marks here to here. These lines connect the same marks on this dead whale and the live whale. So we were able to figure out this was a whale we'd seen alive, and then it ended up washed up dead on the beach. This animal actually became tangled in a gill net. Well, I'd like to look at the wraps a little better around the tail to try to judge how this occurred, but my guess is it would have most likely occurred with the animal alive. It's about a 25-foot male juvenile gray whale. It looks like it's been dead 1 to 2 weeks. It has very little skin left. It's tangled and looks like maybe more than one type of gear, but I can't quite tell how it became entangled yet. It's clear this gear has been in the water a long time. It's got quite a bit of growth on it.
They must just get in and spin around or wrap themselves in there somehow, because you'd almost have to, you know, spin yourself into that to get caught like that. But obviously, they do a job.
That is the typical response.
Yeah.
Even when they get in nets or anything like that, they start to get tangled in a hole.
On rare occasions, intrepid rescuers have discovered and freed a fortunate whale from a tangle of nets. The others drown unnoticed and uncounted. While John continues his work on what can be seen, the team continues north to an increasingly dangerous obstacle, one that is invisible.
Everything we do as people that impacts the ocean eventually impacts whales. So it's really changing our lifestyle to know that out of sight, out of mind doesn't work in the ocean. It's not the silent world. In fact, it's the noisy world. These whales have adapted over millions of years to use sound to perceive their environment. Humans actually produce lots of sound in the water, and so we do lots of things to the environment that we're just starting to realize we better find out what is the impact of this, because it impacts not only the marine mammals, but the fish and the birds, the seals, the sea lions, etc.
I put you right in the center of the whole shooting match.
Is he shipping lane?
Yeah, you're right in the middle of this.
Let's take a drop here. We can pull all our radio mics down, isolate the hydrophone, and then just give a good quiet listen and see what we have. Matt, give a listen to this.
It's so loud.
It's a lot, huh?
This is beyond... This is such a surprise to me.
Yeah, check this out, Blair.
It is pretty impressive.
Blow your mind, man.
In the last 10 years, there has been an increasing focus on a new form of environmental pollution of the oceans, and that is acoustic pollution, sound, generated by lots of different activities, from underwater explosives to high-intensity military sonar to oil development, commercial shipping, intrusive scientific research, even. Some of the things that we've learned are frightening. We know, for example, that high-intensity military sonar has the potential not just to interfere with behaviors or to injure, but actually to cause stranding and death.
In 2003, an incident involving mid-frequency sonar was recorded at Harrow Strait, Washington, by scientist Ken Balcom. The coast looks serene, but Ken and his assistant describe an intense drama underwater involving killer whales as the sonar is turned on.
We're just getting blasted here. I guess the Coast Guard's looking into it. They know nothing about it, and they're trying to talk to the ship.
This is nuts. I think they're hurting these whales. Hey, John, this is Ken. Can you guys get your Navy to shut that sonar off? I'm afraid we might get some dead or deaf whales out of this. Stop.
The U.S. Navy is seeking global deployment of a new, longer-range, low-frequency sonar called LFA.
And the good news is that we were successful at getting a federal court to block the global deployment of this system. The bad news is that this is just one system, and the Navy is just one military, and there are militaries all around the world that are not only testing these systems, but they're deploying them.
The frequency and intensity of all obstacles challenging the gray whales, including sound pollution, diminish as they finally pass the last of the densely populated coastlines. Continuing north and around the Gulf of Alaska, gray whales reach the final stretch, passing through the Bering Strait to a remote sea protected in its isolation. In this ancient seasonal cycle, the famished whales replenish themselves in a feast that lasts the entire Arctic summer.
My name is Birgitta. I'm born and raised up here in Barrow, the northernmost community of North America. A lot of people have been misled, saying that where we live in the tundra, it's a very barren ground, when actually it's a very pristine and very beautiful place.
The waters off Point Barrow once sustained an entire culture.
Our understanding is that you were maybe the last gray whale hunter.
It was hard. It was hard life. People went whaling sometimes in a bad year with not enough food, you know, for the families when they went out. So we're trying to collect food for the winter. If winter these animals are not here, when the whale come up at you, then it will just go right at you like he wants you to be, it wants to be taken. Even if you make noise, they'll just keep coming like they want it to be caught. You hit them, you shoot them, and you get them. They make it look so easy, you know, for them to be caught. Sometimes they let that harpoon just drop like this, and they just let it go like that. The whole harpoon will just drop right here at the neck, and then just turn over. Whale seems to know that these whalers are really compassionate, that treat people with love, feeding them.
Anybody else hunt the gray whale farther east or farther west of here?
In Russia.
Russia?
The Russia quota, I believe, is about 135 gray whales a year. Aboriginal whaling is going on now in Alaska, in Greenland, in Russia, in the Caribbean. And it's incredibly important for many countries that don't have the luxury of being able to grow cattle. They can't farm or they can't ranch, that they need to hunt in order to survive. I think that whale populations can sustain, biologically, they can sustain a harvest. The real issues are ethical issues, and do people think that whales should be hunted or not? It's a decision that the world needs to make on whether this is an appropriate action to take for a resource that really belongs to the world.
But gray whales may be most threatened by the world outside the Arctic in the form of global warming. The Arctic is the end of the line in terms of cold temperature, and so it's here that the consequences of global warming are most dramatically experienced.
We've seen a lot of change as far as the ocean, the retreat of the main ice pack and the main ice pack breaking up, and we are facing some erosion problems due to the rising temperature of the ocean.
Oh, you know, everybody talks about global warming, but up here on the edge, boy, you can really see it. You know, it's been a dramatic change in the last decade. Geez, we had, you know, polar bears get off the ice there, and the ice went back out, and all of a sudden we had like 80 or 90 polar bears, you know, within 12 miles of town for several months.
We're not seeing the ice year round like we used to. You know, so I believe the ice is melting.
Do you remember the ice all year long here?
Oh, yeah, I remember when I was a kid, the ice being up here all year round. We would lose the ice maybe for 2 or 3 months out of the year, and the ice would come back. But there's a few times where maybe the past 5 years, we've had open water all year round.
But that's good. I like global warming, if that's what you're...
Why do you like global warming?
Because it's warmer.
Because it's warmer, what's happening?
Because we burn less gas.
So you're saving money?
Money. When you don't have money, not much money like some of the people out there now, it's something that is going to help our communities.
Don't you think the polar bear needs the ice to survive?
Yeah.
Does that mean the polar bears are going to disappear?
They can go North Pole where there's a lot of ice still out there, you know.
They're stranded because there's no ice.
No ice.
And it's too far away.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, definitely there's a great concern, I think, among the whole marine mammal community about how vulnerable marine mammals would be to global climate change. Because even fairly small changes in ocean temperature can mean tremendous differences in what's available. I also think of all the areas that gray whales have been studied, probably the least studied area is their food supply in the Bering Sea. And it clearly, with this mortality event, showed how little we knew about that.
Over the last 3 decades, global warming has added to a 30% loss in the Bering Sea of the gray whale's main food. We now know that warmer ocean temperatures mean less food for gray whales, and that 1/3 of them died in 1999 and 2000 because they were starving.
It really does scare me more than any other single thing, you know, how climate change could have just drastic effects on many of these marine mammal populations.
Big
Yeah,
turn.
he just did a U-turn.
Yeah. Oh, it's on its back.
The numbers of whales and whale populations are not growing, but what's growing is the number of hazards that these species have to encounter and surmount in order to survive. And I think the Pacific coast just epitomizes what that problem is.